constitutional law is one of those archaic sounding, ideas that most folks don't really get a chance to really understand, much less experience. But the events that we've seen in the last several years kind of is forcing it down our throats, whether you know it or not. And social media and the internet makes information so easy to get, but it makes the wrong information so easy to get, and it's very difficult for people, even people that are experienced with whatever topic,
Mhm.
to differentiate what is good information and what is bad information, what is outdated information, what is fake news. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, Fortunately, though, law is different. Law is based off of what we call precedents. So every court case of any significance in the federal system is recorded, and its meanings and it's what they call holdings, or like the declaration of the court, uh, is alive, and so new court cases will look back on what the old courts did and say, well, in this set of facts, this court said this, so I'm going to apply this to our present set of facts, even though they might be slightly different. So there's no fake news in law. There's nothing where you can say, well, because I see it all the time on social media where he's a SCOTUS said this. No, they didn't. It's very
Yeah.
easy to go back and look and see exactly what they said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the, the the problem here is that you get people who like to twist things for their own advantage, and they'll write an article that says something when it might not be true, or you get various interpretations of what the court really meant to say. And of course, you have conservative and liberal views. It's important to know that in jurisprudence, especially with the Supreme Court, you hear a lot about liberal justices and conservative justices, and people say, well, this guy's appointed by Bush, so he can't have a good mind when it comes to this, or this guy was appointed by Obama, so he doesn't know it. When they say liberal or conservative justice, they don't necessarily mean partisan. They mean a liberal or conservative view of how they view the Constitution. And that means, do they take it literally word for word? That would be a conservative view. Or do they take the progressive view and expand its meaning? And the Constitution was really written to be expanded. And it doesn't necessarily align with political views. For example, everybody knows gun rights is a conservative agenda, right? I mean, they want expanded use of firearms. But the law that basically gave people the right to keep handguns in their home for self-defense
Mhm.
didn't come around until 2008 to 2010.
Oh,
There
really?
was no case law in any point in history that said you could own a handgun for self-defense in your home. That was Justice Scalia's very famous DC versus Heller decision. And then the McDonald decision after that in 2010, striking down Chicago's very strict gun laws that forbade handguns within the city limits. Even though Justice Scalia is a conservative justice, partisan-wise and politically, his interpretation of the Constitution was actually very expansive. He took a concept in the Constitution and he expanded it, and basically it made judge-created law through interpretation, and said, well, this is what the founders wrote, but what they really meant was this. So you can see where conservative and liberal doesn't necessarily mesh with, what we think conservative liberal views are.
Right. Well, I think that a lot of the problem with that is that over the last 20 years, I'll say in particular, we have seen such a partisan divide that it's starting to politicize parts of the government that should not be politicized, and it has just been I mean, it's just been rapidly expanded under Trump. I mean, he actively tries to politicize the Supreme Court, the CIA, the FBI, these institutions that are supposed to be nonpartisan. And I mean, it's gotten to the point that I mean, people don't know what to believe in that regard because everyone's coming from their biased perception. Now, I'll just take a step back. You had, talked about how people don't know just basic facts anymore, and a lot of people talk about how we're living in an age of anti-intellectualism. We're really living in an age of pseudoscience. I mean, there's so many different sources, and all these different sources they present information that I mean, uh, great example I'll use, just because they're always my punching bag, are the flat earthers. Like if you go to some of the flat earth websites and you actually look over, their research, like it looks convincing. They have, statistics, science, they talk about gravitational pulls and this and that. If you're just a person who's never studied that stuff and you're just stumbling upon it, it looks like convincing data. And that is why now more than ever, we need experts like yourself to kind of break these issues down. So, the common man like me can actually understand them and can actually, form an opinion. But I mean, that's also the problem with this age of pseudoscience is that no one trusts experts anymore. No
Yeah,
one, everyone assumes that just because they watch a few YouTube videos and read a Wikipedia article that, their
they're
opinion
the
is
expert.
valid. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That their opinion is as valid as someone who's spent, I mean, you probably spent at least a decade studying law, if not longer.
Yeah, it's not a new concept, this pseudoscience. I mean, it's a very, very old concept. It's called confirmation bias. And
Right.
basically what it boils down to is you're going to find what you're looking for. And it happens to even very learned individuals who are doing their research, but if they have a preconceived notion of what their biases already are, they tend to find facts to match those biases. The problem with today is that, well, number one, people's baseline education levels are plummeting, probably due to decades of Republican-led education cuts.
Right.
But two, it's this ease of information. It used to be before you wanted to do research, you went to the library and you looked it up. And chances are, if it was in a book, it was probably accurate for the times, even though science changes, or whatever thought changes. But now, like I said, you can get on and do research. And that's the problem, is that people also today think, well, getting on YouTube or Google or whatever is research. And it can be if you
Depending on the
research
source. Yeah.
the right sources. This is something that every law school professor tells its first year students. Back up your assertions. Don't just say that something is a fact. Give me a site that I can look up, and that site has to be some sort of authority. It can't be YouTube. It can't be Wikipedia. It's got to be something that like a court decision.
Right.
So the professors say nobody cares what you think. What does the law say? And we can translate that to normal life is that nobody cares what you think. What does the verified authority on that subject say? So if you're getting your research from YouTube or Wikipedia or some, Joe Rogan's podcast or whatever it is, not that I love Joe Rogan, but don't get me wrong,
Same.
he's got some weird people on. That's not research. And I can't tell you how many times I have to tell somebody, look, no matter how much you really, really want to believe it, your Google degree does not equal my law degree. It just doesn't. And so that being said, I think you're exactly right. There's just so much stuff flying around that even well-meaning people don't know what's real and what's not.
Well,